Hi, this is Iain Stewart. I'm talking to you from a very rainy uh, Alabama. I wish I could send some of that moisture your way. Um, it's an honor to be the juror of the Watercolor West exhibition this year. I am so sorry that I cannot be there in person. Um, it's it's been a year of firsts for many people, and especially in Southern California. It's uh, it's pretty devastating what you guys are going through. Um, I'd like to talk before I get to the awards presentation. We didn't know that this exhibition was going to hang, let alone be open to the public until this week, which is why you see me in my studio with a fairly impromptu and quick video so that I can announce the award winners in public. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about my process first. When I jury a show, I am given electronic images of your work and then go through those one by one. I start out, and I just go through the entire show and really try to keep my mind open and get a feel for what the entries are. I'd also like to, just as I'm saying this, take a moment to congratulate everyone for having the courage to put your work forth for consideration. You all deserve that. It's a very tough thing to do. And I also know from experience, it's very, your work is very personal to me. So I take that very seriously. I do my best to give your work the same consideration that I would want you to give mine. So back to how I do this. I've got my laptop and I'm looking at that, it's in my lap and I am sitting and projecting it to a television screen that's rather large. So I get two different views of the work and at two different scales. I can also zoom in, and given that the televisions and the quality of them now, the resolution is very good, and but it's really the reason I do that is to get a feeling virtually, which is a word we're becoming very used to now, is to get a feeling of what your work would look like at different distances. And then I'll begin to, separate images into one camp or the other. And it's a very hard job. It's actually the toughest thing I do. I take my painting extremely seriously as well as I do my teaching. But when I am aware that I have your work in my hands and I'm making decisions about your work, there's a much different approach and an understanding of the gravity of that, of what's being asked of me. So please don't think this is something that I rush through or don't give proper attention to. I spend a lot of time at this. I will try to make this as short as possible and get to the awards. A little bit about myself, or me, is I'm trained as an architect and spent the last 24 years as an architectural illustrator. I don't have a degree in art. I do have a degree in fine arts, but it's in a different discipline. But I find that architecture is coming from that background into fine art is a is a really good place to begin that journey. Um, I think of architecture as maybe an umbrella that incorporates all of the arts, and um, and the education is excellent, and it certainly teaches you discipline and exposes any weaknesses you may have. Architecture, and when I went through in the 90s, it was still a bit like the Marines, and if you were if you didn't know what you were doing, or you were sort of caught off guard, uh, the jurors would pounce, and it was sharks with blood in the water, and grown men crying and things like that. Uh, they've taken a bit out of that now, which is reasonable, but it's a very good introduction, I would think, into understanding what a good critique is. And I think that a good critique should be honest, um, and also meant to uh, help you. And sometimes people misconstrue you know, how that works. They think if you say something bad about their painting, then automatically they don't like it, and then you only hear the negative bits. I can tell you from experience, my father, Iain Stewart, is a watercolor artist, and a very fine one. He's also an architect and an architectural illustrator. I can count on one hand the amount of lessons he's given me in my life, uh, but the absolute brutal critiques he has unleashed on me over the course of my 49 years on this planet um, have served me very well. I've built a bit of a thick skin, but I also know when I put a piece of mine out there, it's my baby, it's my creation, and I don't want anyone speaking ill of it, but they have to. I think that's possibly the greatest lesson, both receiving a degree in architecture and the ruthlessness of my father's crits that put me where I am today. Um, Another thing that architecture teaches you uh, is the first solution is quite often not the right one. And in learning how to express your ideas, you need to go through many iterations to solve this problem. I remember in architecture in studio, a particularly uh, old school professor that would hold you in studio until he thought you had done enough work. But you would spend a lot of time solving some sort of design problem. And he'd walk by and give it a glance and say, do it again. And I don't want to see any of the stuff you've done before. I want something completely different. And so getting that mindset of starting from scratch over and over again on the same problem, I think is a very, very good tool and uh, a good habit to have in your arsenal when you are deciding how you're going to capture a certain idea. And I'll just take a quick look at my notes here and make sure I'm not jumping around. But that's where I come from. And also as an illustrator working for architects, I call that painting by committee. Architects by nature are very, very specific about what they want. And my job was and is to take all of that information and create an image that will showcase the design in the best light. And that may take a few iterations. And before the computer could, create these models for you to either trace or use as a base layer for some sort of other work, we had to create these by hand. And the only way you learn how to do that is by reading. There are very few people that know how to, or what I would call perspectivists, and very few instructors that knew it well enough to teach. Because if you knew that well enough, you'd be doing that for a living because it was fairly lucrative. But if there's anything I can just drive home, is the idea that keep warming up, keep working at a solution. Going at an idea cold is the same thing as me jumping up right now and deciding to run a marathon. I'll make it to the end of the block, and then something will seize up, and stretchers, ambulances, the like. When I am looking at and choosing a show, I'm looking for a balance of subject matter. I am looking, my ideas about what are, what would go on my walls, that goes out the window. It's about what you create, and creating me selecting a balanced exhibition that showcases a multitude of styles and subjects and approaches. And if you, now that you're there, you can have a look at the walls, and hopefully my decisions will show that. So again, there are a few elements that I do look for when making my decisions on what gets into the show and what doesn't. Design, how that's treated. I often show in my workshops that most figurative paintings can be broken down into about 5 major elements, and getting those proportions and angles right first, and understanding the space that they take on your board before you start putting in any detail is of absolute importance to the way that would look finally. But I do break it down into seriously, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 major lines. And I'm looking for also balance, tension, resolution, certainly technical proficiency, your brush control, wash control, how you treat edges. Style, that's a unique thing, and certainly part of it. I've been around the block a few times. I can certainly tell if someone's taken a workshop from so-and-so. I'm looking for you, and that's really important that you understand. Never paint for the juror. I mean, that's been said a lot, and you read it in the magazines, but don't paint for you. There'll be, you only have a few times to be able to say something uniquely yours. Don't lose that chance, and don't gloss over it. The most important aspect, I think, is your story. What do you have to say? What's different in the way you view something rather than someone next to you? And does your voice come through? If we take an analogy like music, all chord progressions have been used, I would think, in many different cases, and styles, rock and roll, classical, country, what have you. But it's when a musician gets and figures out their own riff and uses the same notes everybody's been using in the same progression or key, and still is able to create something uniquely theirs. There's something absolutely special about that that is unique to them. So do you want to be a cover band, or do you want to write your own music? Something to think about. I'm looking for emotion. I'm looking for how you transform a scene, how that filters through from the kernel of an idea into what I see finally. For me, that involves a lot of sketching and quite often a lot of ruined paintings before I get to a point where I'm ready to tackle it. And maybe, once I've finished a painting, I realize I missed an opportunity, and you have to start over. That can be a little bit daunting and a little soul crushing, but it's the truth. So I think just to simplify all that, I'm looking for you. I want to see your take on the vision that's in your mind. I don't want to see, sort of a rub off of someone else. I want to see something uniquely yours. I think in life that is, your voice is the one thing you have, and especially in creating, your voice is specific to you, and you should celebrate that, and you should work hard to make that as as much a part of your work as you can. So without further ado, I will get to the awards. I'm sitting here, and usually I'm talking to people. Right now, I've got a few dogs in the house. It's raining. It's just stopped raining. And I'm looking at myself on a camera 18 inches from my head. It's really strange. So you'll have to forgive me if I lose my train of thought, because then I look and see my glasses are, not straight or something like that, or maybe I've got a hair that's out of place. One of my most enjoyable moments in jurying a show is when I walk into the gallery after after looking at all your paintings on a computer screen, and I get to do what I call meeting the paintings. And that's where it completely transforms. Scale, color, your brushwork, the little things that may not be noticeable on a computer become everything, and begin to tell the story of your painting in a completely different way. This year, that's not the case. So if there's something a bit of advice I could give you, and as a juror, and I've done many shows, is be very careful about how you reproduce your work. Whether you scan it or you take a photograph of it, make sure that is the most accurate depiction of your work you can do, or you can create. And then avoid the whole idea of playing with Photoshop and wanting to slide those levels and get a little more contrast, or whatnot. Because if I walk in and I've seen something with a lot of glow and contrast, and I see a flat painting, I know you've been playing with me. Use the computer as a tool. If you want to take a photograph or scan it at a certain stage and play with levels, I don't have any problem with that. That's using all the tools at your disposal. But then go back and create the contrast that you like on the screen on your painting. and understand that, once you put glass on that, everything's going to come up a little bit as well. But avoid the temptation to give it a little nudge, because, well, I can tell, and most people can. So without further ado, I will get to the awards. And if you will bear with me. So I will take a few moments and for the top 3 images, and I've been asked to read these or list these in order from first to last. So that's how I will do it. And so I'm just going to bring on my screen up the first place painting. And it is Peter Yablikoff, DC3 on the beach in Iceland. Just a few thoughts about this painting and about the top 3, we'll say. They're all interchangeable at some point in the top 3, 4 paintings. And it finally comes down to, what moves me the most. When I walk into an exhibition, I'll see the painting, or I'll see a couple of paintings that may catch my eye, but I go in directionally, and if I keep seeing that from different angles and it looks good, I'm not going to go and walk over to it and have a look at it. I go through. When I finally do come up to the actual painting, then I see if I was right or not. And that sort of dance between glimpsing something from afar and enjoying it, and then being presented with it, right in your face, will either confirm or, dismiss my ideas about its merit. So this particular painting, typically I'm not a fan of sort of hyperrealism, but that does not preclude me from making the decisions I make. I think I've made that very clear. I'm open to things telling me what they, to things speaking to me. And you'll see I'm looking to my right. That's because that's where the monitor is. If you really look at it, and you're there in public, hopefully, and you'll be able to do this. I think the story, at least to me, and by the way, I never read the titles of paintings when I'm jurying them. It's only after that I do. But we have this huge solid thing that's been ripped apart and time-aged and weather-beaten, and something that used to fly. And it is solidly on the ground, and it's in pieces. And, part of its wings missing. Certainly the propellers and all of the functioning things that make an airplane fly are gone. And it's just the remnants of that. But we, or at least I, in the sky, if you look at that with any sort of, look at that closely, look at the chemtrails and the movement within the sky. And I don't know if Peter's original intent was to convey that idea, but certainly that's what I feel. Is I see the memories of movement that this magnificent aircraft was used to do, in contrast to it now sort of actually having a bank of sand washed up against it. Helping that weight at the bottom is the amount of detail that decided to put into the foreground, you know, and that balance between the size of the fuselage and what we, is the cockpit, um, and the shift of color into the more violet hues and the ground, to me, balance very, very well. It's a striking image. Lastly, I'll say this: adding to that feeling of weather beaten and age is the way that texture is applied throughout the painting. If you look in the sky, you'll see splatters and scrapes of a rust color. And that, I think it'd be a very different painting without it. The it it's and I don't want to say anything cliche, but that's what ties it together for me. That's that extra thing that just put it over the top. So congratulations, Peter. That is a fantastic image. Okay, so second place is Woon Lam Eng with his painting Slow Walk in Amsterdam. Look at the difference between the styles of paintings 1 and 2. Now, in my mind, that was a tough decision, and that could have gone either way. There is a spontaneity in this painting and the story of city and how humans activate space. That's so refreshing. It's almost a sketch, but I wouldn't label it that way at all. It's also, which is very intriguing to me, is the way that we, there's a lot of local color going on. There's not a lot of depth in this particular painting, which typically for me would be a death knell, but in this instance, it's not. They work together. The shapes, the forms, the people. If you look carefully, the areas that are left white, and it's quite often people say, or I say, never underestimate the power of white paper, the graphic power of white paper. And this is a masterful use of that. And if you look closer, none of the line work's erased. It's put in very, very loosely. This is, it's not belabored. It's fresh, and just the confidence, I think, to rely on shape to tell the story. 2 little brush strokes and a little brush stroke on top, and you've got a person. These little brush strokes and stripes that maybe indicate a shirt with, stripes on it, but the way that transfers or translates into the buildings and the way that the roofs are, all of that's very, very simply handled, and I think it takes courage to do. So congratulations, it's a magnificent piece. And third place, Marilyn Ware, Fire and Ice. Okay, and I've just pulled that up. This one is striking in a completely different way than the other two. The heat, or let's say temperature, and that's in the title, but I mean, you don't need to read the title to understand that, is that juxtaposition of intense heat and uh, and then cools that make this a magnificent piece. I think had there not been this ledge in the foreground, and if that had been treated with too much detail, I think the effect would have been less impactful. But the way that it does cut off what looks to be a lava flow, perhaps it's the last glow of light on water. I don't know. I haven't been there, but it doesn't matter. Reality is there for you to play with it, and never let reality get in the way of a good painting. I'm seeing, a story of temperature here, and then I'm wondering up at the top when we get into these nice, cool blues, which certainly complement the warms. On the ridge, it almost looks as if, to me, and I can't get up there with a magnifying glass, or even stand 3 inches from it, is seeing, are these man-made structures up there? Is that a little hot, or is that just me reading rocks differently? But there's a question in there, which again intrigues me, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. I wish I had time to go through the entire show and do this, but we'd be here for hours. And my mother is actually really helping me out here by keeping the dogs quiet and the ambient noise low. But we will get on to the next images. So hold on just a minute. All right. So, number 4, the Tom Fong Memorial Award is Christine Wisenchek-Bunn with In the Moment. Number 5, the Lily Y Award is John Dietrich Chautauqua. 6 is the Patrons Award, and that's Sayako Nakamura, Blue Room 2. Number 8, the Henry Fukuhara Memorial Award, Stephen Walters, Autumn in Vishrad. I know I did not pronounce that right. The Joan Drachman Award, number 9, Shigao, Vine and Pot. The Founders Award, Ken Call, Diaphanous. The Bill and Magda Peregrine Memorial Award, Kathleen Conover, Clear the Decks. The National Watercolor Society Reciprocal Award at number 12 is Vicki Nelson, Trading Barbs. The California Watercolor Association Reciprocal Award at 13, Chris Krupinski, After the Game. At 14, the San Diego Watercolor Association Reciprocal Award, Larry Hughes, Looking Back at Zion. At 15, the Southern California Art Association's Award, Eric Weigart, Calella, Spain. At 16, the Jurors Award number 1, Diane Feckenbach, The Grandfather Tree. At 17, the Jurors Award number 2, Brenda Swenson, Fire Followers. At 18, the Quiller Gallery Award, Ginger Chan set sail. And then we got to the Merchandise Awards, and I've been asked to present these in no particular order. So I'll just go through those. The Combined Merchandise Award won Carol McSweeney as one. The Combined Merchandise Award 2, Anne Green, Song of the Sun. The Combined Merchandise Award 3, Lori Goldstein Warren, That Girl. The Combined Merchandise Award 4, Carrie Waller, Quenched. The Combined Merchandise Award 5, Stanley Wolfe, and I think this is maybe the most interesting title of the entire show. Three Birds, a Rat, and Uncle Henry's Butterfly. And finally, the Combined Merchants Award 6, Keiko Yasukura, Hill Country Morning. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. My thanks to all the board members and the people behind the scenes at Watercolor West and at the La Brea Gallery. Quite often, these people do tremendous things that are really given thanks for. Without them, these things do not happen. It's a pleasure to speak to you this morning. I wish you all well, and thank you very much. Cheers.